They say that they are the healthiest diets, but are they really? Welcome to the Exam Room Live Health All-Stars series, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching and downloading in more than 150 countries around the world and making the Exam Room one of the most downloaded nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. This is the second episode of our Health All-Star series, and today we are going to be looking at what are being called the top diets for 2023. Dr. Neal Barnard is here with a closer look at these can't miss weight loss programs. And we're also going to be opening up the doctor's mailbag. So if there's a question that you would like to ask Dr. Barnard, go ahead, post that in the comments or in the chat, and we will get to as many as we possibly can here on the show today. Already see so many great questions coming in. And stay tuned, because we also today will be having a huge announcement for our exam roomies who happen to be on the West Coast, our California exam roomies. Stay tuned. We're going to be giving you some very big news in just a little bit. But first, let's welcome the author of Your Body in Balance, Dr. Neal Barnard, to the show. Happy New Year. I'm so happy that you're here because we have one heck of a topic here to talk about.
Happy New Year to you, Chuck. It's great to be back with you.
So a press release crossed my desk yesterday, and it is from U.S. News, World Report, talking about the healthiest diets of 2023. And I was very excited when I got through this, and I'm like, okay, let me scroll and see where a plant-based diet is going to land. And I keep scrolling, and I keep scrolling, and I scroll some more. Didn't ever quite see it, but I did see the big ones, Dr. Barnard. We saw keto on there. We saw the MIND diet, something called the TLC diet, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, Zone, South Beach. We saw some plant-friendly ones like the Ornish diet, but nowhere in there was that plant-based diet. So what is your opinion on these healthiest diets for 2023?
Well, Chuck, you're asking really such an important question, because everybody really wants to know what's a diet that's going to work, that's going to be safe, that's going to be healthy for me, and maybe healthy for my kids or the other people who might be doing this with me. And the number one reason, of course, why people want to change their diet is because whatever indulgences they may have had in November and December and through the holidays kind of take a toll. And on December 31st at midnight, people say, enough. I need to eat healthier. I need to lose the weight. I need to get my cholesterol down, whatever the heck it is. So for the past 13 years, U.S. News has done these ratings, and they sound like there's some basis for it. They described the jury that weighed in on these things and what their evidence was. But you notice a lot of things that are really not so good. When you look at the best diet overall, and keep in mind, the number one motivation is weight loss. The best diet overall, according to U.S. News, is the Mediterranean diet. And now the funny thing about that is that if you look at the big studies of Mediterranean diets, researchers remember the Lyon trial, which was done in France, or the Predimed trial, huge 7,000 participants done in Spain. These studies showed that you really don't lose much weight. You might even gain weight with a Mediterranean diet, because the diet has fish, and it's got some poultry, and it's got a lot of oil and these kinds of things. And in our study, where we did a crossover trial of a vegan diet versus Mediterranean, the Mediterranean diet didn't cause weight loss at all. So we thought, wait a minute, how can a diet that doesn't actually cause weight loss be listed as a number one best diet for people to follow right now? And when you when you go through the data, you find that they kind of twisted the facts a little bit. They do mention studies that looked at a Mediterranean diet and did show weight loss. You go into the study and you discover they used a Mediterranean diet along with a pretty severe calorie restriction. So, it was maybe you were eating Mediterranean foods, but in every single case, they just cut calories. So what they're finding is you don't lose weight on that kind of diet at all. But if you cut up calories with any kind of diet, you lose weight. So I'm sorry to say, the numbers got a little bit manipulated, and that makes a Mediterranean diet, which is frankly a sexy sounding diet that everybody would like to do. I mean, who wouldn't like to be on the coast of Tuscany, drinking a glass of red wine, looking out at the sunset? But the fact is, it's not going to burn 1 ounce off of you.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pull up the rankings here. This is the actual website here from US News, and you see the best diets overall for 2023. I mean, that's just a nice catchy headline there. And you do see Mediterranean diet fall there at number 1. Then the DASH diet comes in at number 2. That's one, Dr. Barnard, you and I have talked about on the show previously. That's one that's set up to help people specifically who are struggling with hypertension. Is that correct?
Yeah, dietary approaches to stop hypertension. And like Mediterranean, it's sort of a step in the right direction, but not as powerful, obviously, as getting the meat off your plate.
And so you're talking about getting the meat off of the plate. I think that what we have here in a tie for second, the flexitarian diet, you see that right there. That's one that I think that kind of gives people a little bit of comfort when they think about, well, at least I can still eat some of the stuff that I've been eating my entire life, some meat, some dairy. It gives me that flexibility. We get in an argument, well, not an argument here, but we get into a discussion with a lot of people in this house anyway about the all or none approach. When you see something that is flexitarian there, does that sound any alarms for you, or is it kind of a entryway for somebody who wants to eventually maybe eat an exclusively plant-based diet?
It's an important question, Chuck. You know, for a person, people are free to do what they wish to do. And if a person says, well, I'd like to go to a halfway healthy diet, but not the other way, they have that right. They can certainly do it. However, if you're a medical professional and somebody is asking you, I've had a heart attack, I don't want to have another one, what's the best way for me to really regain my health? Or I'm on all these medicines for diabetes or cholesterol, what's the very best way for me to get rid of it? You wouldn't recommend a flexitarian diet any more than you would recommend for a smoker, like a flexitarian smoking program. You know, you have a cigarette on Wednesday or something like that. And really for two reasons. One is the flexitarian approach doesn't work very well. You know, if you're a meat eater on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but you're a vegetarian the other days or something, you're getting more cholesterol, more fat, you're not get the results. The second thing is that in the same way as a person who's succeeded at being a non-smoker for 3 weeks, if they decide, I'm going to give myself permission to have a cigarette now on the weekend, you know exactly what is going to happen. You're wakening up those addictions. And that happens not just with cigarettes, but it happens with food. And so for many, many people, not only the most effective way, but the easiest way is just to say, well, those are bad foods that didn't love me back. I'm just going to leave the cheese and meat off the plate. So it does sound, for many people, it does sound kind of draconian. You know, you're going to avoid those bad foods altogether. But for many people, they say, got to tell you, just breaking up with a bad love affair with food is the easiest thing.
I scrolled down on this page to take a look at how the editors arrived at these rankings, and you see the scorecard there for the flexitarian diet. On a scale of 1 to 5, it gets a 4.4. And it looks like the 4 criteria that they have here is fast weight loss. So how quickly can you slim down? Weight loss overall, I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, that maybe that's for sustained. Easy to follow seems to be weighted pretty heavily, pardon the pun. And then is it healthy? When you're talking about an overall ranking for healthy, to me, that seems pretty ambiguous because one person's definition of healthy may differ greatly for somebody else's. I'm wondering what the consensus there might have been.
Yeah, well, I think you put your finger on 2 really important things, Chuck. The first is ease to follow. Flexitarian is a word designed to make it sound easy. It may or may not work, but it's really easy. And that's what the Mediterranean diet has going for it too. It just sounds easy. In reality, if you actually follow the rules in a Mediterranean diet done according to research criteria, it's not easy at all. It's a pain in the neck and not very effective. But it sounds easy, and same with flexitarian. But the other issue is it effective? Now, keep in mind, Chuck, to arrive at these rankings, they didn't take 100 overweight people and put them on the diet and test it. What they did is they went to a couple of dozen people who write and have expertise in various nutrition topics and asked them what they thought. Many of them have probably never done a flexitarian diet. They may never have done a vegan diet. They may never have done an Ornish diet. And it's kind of like, if you can imagine Consumer Reports saying, let's rate the 2023 SUVs for, let's road test them, but we'll have people rate them who never actually stepped into the car, who never drove it. And that is, I'm sorry to say, what we're seeing here. So for example, they'll say, is it easy to follow a vegan diet? For people who haven't done it, it does sound hard. For people who have done it, they think, wow, that was like easy. It's like so much easier than being hungry all the time. So
yeah, and so in this case, Lisa Esposito, an author by the name of Lisa Esposito, wrote everything that's on the page, and then it was reviewed by a registered dietitian, Jonah Bertios there. And I think the point that you just made was marvelous, that they may themselves not have ever eaten that flexitarian diet. So really all they're operating off of is some numbers on a page and what somebody else has reported back to them. I want to jump down to number 4 here, and the MIND diet. I can't remember whether or not this one has come up on the show before, but the MIND diet, that is a very close cousin to the Mediterranean diet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, the MIND diet was really devised by Martha Claire Morris and her team at Rush University. And Martha Claire was a real good friend of ours, I have to say. She presented at our conference a few times on really breakthrough research for Alzheimer's disease. And so she and her team constructed a diet that was designed to take all the things that we knew about preventing Alzheimer's disease and plug them into a diet and call it the MIND diet. And I have to say, it's 90% a good diet. I mean, it's a lot of vegetables and fruits, eating for color, getting away from bad fats. The only kind of weak point with it is that I think they got a little carried away with fish fat because, to its credit, fish fat in some cases is better than, say, lard, but it's not as good as just getting away from the fat altogether. But the MIND diet has a lot to recommend it, and that's it. So I was glad to see that come up, even if it is not, in my view, the strongest diet.
Let's talk about some of the big time commercial diets that also made the list. I mean, these are the real money makers. Let me go ahead and pull that back up here. If you scroll down and you reach number 8 here, I don't know what the Volumetrics diet is either. I'm going to have to research that one. But number 8 is when you get into WW, formerly known as Weight Watchers. What I remember, even as a little kid, about these big commercial diet programs is that people sign up for them, they cycle on, they have a little bit of short-term success, they cycle off, and then within a year or two, they're right back starting the program again. What is it about these programs, Dr. Barnard, A, that makes them so popular, and B, do they really work, in your opinion?
Well, I think there's really 2 considerations. The first is the foods that are being recommended for you. Are they healthy foods? Are they plant-based foods? And with Weight Watchers, they make progress over time. And you can say, all right, I want to do Weight Watchers because I need some support, but I want to do it as a vegan, and you can figure out how to do that, which is a good thing. The other piece of it is if they're not just sending you a box of food, but they're actually giving you some support, I think that's a good element too. That doesn't mean you have to sign up for Weight Watchers. To tell the honest truth, if a person joins any community, this community, let's say a person is watching the exam room every week, and I'm serious, you're getting support for staying on a healthful diet, or you join one of the PCRM classes, like Fight Diabetes with Food or whatever, that the food choices are half of it, the support is the other half. And if you've got a way to get that support, that's really a helpful thing too. If you're the Lone Ranger and you're just doing this diet by yourself and your family doesn't support you, it's a lot harder.
Well, the thing with WW here, beyond the sense of community, is it does say here that you can be vegan and vegetarian friendly with it. You can easily modify the recipes. One thing I will give them points for is what it says here in the article is that they've updated their point system to account for added sugar, unsaturated fat, and fiber in addition to other nutrients. First of all, anytime any plan puts an emphasis on fiber, I think that's fantastic because perhaps most paramountly, more fiber in your diet means that you're eating less meat, less dairy, which has no fiber at all. So, I mean, can I get an amen for fiber here, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. And fiber means, just as you said, Chuck, that you're getting plants because meat doesn't have it, cheese doesn't have it. The other thing is that fiber really doesn't have much in the way of calories. It fills you up and it's going to help you lose weight. By the way, Chuck, let's go back to volumetrics for a minute.
Sure.
This is Barbara Rolls came up with this term, and it's a cool thing, but I don't think of it as a diet. I think of it as a strategy. What she said is basically look at the volume of what you're eating. And that volume of food, let's say it's a soup. How much of it is calories and how much of it is not calories? So if your soup starts out as water, no calories. Now I put in some vegetables to my soup, not too many more calories. Let's say I throw a hunk of pork in, some cheese, and whatever. Now the calorie content is going up. She said, with the volumetric approach, she said, let's choose foods that for any given volume don't have very much calories. So what did she come up with? If you eat an apple or an orange, you eat a banana, you eat fruits and vegetables and these things have very few calories per unit volume. If you eat a hunk of cheese, or for that matter, a spoon of oil, in whatever volume it is, there is a ton of calories. So when people follow the volumetric approach to really where it should go, you end up with a plant-based diet.
Interesting. And it does get points here for being vegan and vegetarian friendly as well. How could it not, based off of what it was you said? It's also budget friendly, planet friendly, and family friendly. I mean, that's all a feather in the cap for them. I want to go back. Let's see if we can scroll down. I want to pick a really popular one here that people may be familiar with. I'm glad that Ornish cracked the top 10. He will be pleased to know that.
Yes, but they didn't treat the Ornish diet fairly at all.
How's that?
I think they made some huge mistakes. They said it's hard to do. It becomes tedious over time, which for people when they're first vegan or whatever, first on a plant-based diet, they may not have lots of choices, but very soon your diet is much more expansive than it was when you're eating chicken and fish and chicken and fish and chicken and fish. The reason I'm telling you that is back in 1992, I did a study, including all of the participants in Dr. Dean Ornish's heart study at that time, where we asked the patients, how do you like it? Do you enjoy it? Is it tedious or whatever? And I want to tell you, Chuck, those people who did not do the Ornish diet, but were in the control group following, it was sort of like the DASH diet or the TLC diet, chicken, fish, they found their diet boring and they were getting no result. The people on the Ornish diet said, it took me 3-4 weeks to get used to it, but I am used to it. My chest pain is gone. I'm losing weight. I love these foods. And they were not like, whoever the editors are at US News saying, gee, I think it's hard to follow that. The participants said, I just love how I feel. The other huge mistake they made, they said that the Ornish diet is not safe for everybody. And they said, if you are underweight, you're not going to get enough calories with it or something like that. Or if you're going to be pregnant, can you be vegan? And these things are unfortunately old 1950s era myths. So I'm going to call out the US News editors. You got to do some fact checking, both about good diets that you underrated, like Ornish, which is a fantastic program, fantastic diet, and the Mediterranean diet, which you really overrated.
If you scroll down the list a little bit further, you see some more of the big time ones that are really kind of still all the rage. You see Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem, which airs commercials all the time. You see South Beach, that's another big one. You have a takeoff on the keto, the Keto. Then you get to the paleo diet. Now, anybody who goes into the store right now, it's hard to miss a lot of these paleo friendly products. Even if you go to some stores and they've got a salad bar, you'll see a lot of the items on the salad bar are listed as being paleo friendly. What is it about this diet that people are so attracted to? And then point beyond that is, how is this one missing the mark?
I think the paleo diet was invented by people who picked up a copy of Men's Health, and it said something like, you can get 6-pack abs if you eat this way. They opened it up, it said the word paleo, and they said, that's it, I'm sold. It's an image. It's the idea is I'm in my loincloth with a spear, intimidating other men and attracting, potential mates. I think it's a testosterone-driven concept, to tell you the honest truth. Now, in its favor, what they're trying to do, or so they say, is to go back in time and see which foods are kind of natural for us. The problem is they picked an arbitrary point in time, which was before people really learned to plant things, but after they invented stone tools to kill animals. If you went back a little bit further and you looked at humans' ancestors or cousins, if I can put it that way, chimpanzees and bonobos and gorillas and orangutans, these are not people eating big hunks of meat. They're not having cheese. They're not doing that at all. They're eating largely or exclusively plant-based diets. So the paleo diet is a romantic notion of hunting for meat and eating whatever vegetables you can pull on the ground, but not taking advantage of agriculture. So you're not planting seeds and you're not growing fruit and that kind of stuff.
Is it really so much of a stretch? I mean, right here it says the paleo diet is based on a simple and straightforward premise. If the cavemen didn't eat it, you shouldn't either. I mean, to me, that does kind of conjure up that stereotypical notion that picture you just painted of a caveman in a loincloth with a spear, and they eat nothing but meat. How much flexibility does somebody eating a paleo diet have in terms of eating produce, legumes, things like that, we talk a lot about here on the show? Is there any room in paleo for that?
Yeah, now they would say, in theory, if it was there for cavemen, it's there for you. So that would mean something raw that you didn't plant. Like, let's say you found berries on a bush, you can eat that. And also, to their credit, they're down on dairy, because cave people, they did not have dairy farms. They weren't milking cows and goats. So they're against dairy. So it's got that for it. But the whole premise is really wrong. And having spoken with paleoanthropologists about this, you'll say, is that a good model for a human diet? They'll say, absolutely not. That the model for a healthy diet for people is a primate diet based on fruits and vegetables and things we could pick with our hands. And we weren't really eating meat until the Stone Age gave us arrowheads and knives and things that we could use for hunting. And by the time that had occurred, we were pretty much in our modern human form. And we still have pre-Stone Age coronary arteries that get atherosclerosis when you try to eat like a caveman.
I'm curious, the exam roomies who are watching live right now, let's do a quick little poll. If you could put in the comment or in the chat some of the diets that you may have tried, I would be real curious to see, just all of the crazy different kind of fad things that have been out there that we've all tried in our life. I mean, I famously did the cookie diet. That's my craziest one, but I've heard of the lemon water diet. I've heard of this diet and that diet. I want to know what diet you have tried. Put that in the chat. You mentioned raw food just a moment ago. The raw food diet actually did make the list, close to the bottom. I think that these guys US News here did the top 25 best diets overall. And the raw food diet comes in at number 24. And this is something that we get questions on from time to time from exam roomies. And it has to do with, is a raw diet actually healthy? Are we leaving something on the table, so to speak, by not eating any cooked food whatsoever?
Well, having the ability to cook really greatly increases your palate. I mean, the number of things that you can serve that are really healthy. For example, grains. A dried kernel of brown rice is not going to be something you're going to put on your plate. Same with dried beans. The minute you can cook them, you've got something that is healthy, high in fiber, no cholesterol, no saturated fat, filled with healthy vitamins and good nutrition. So there's something to be said for cooked foods. If you were to say to me, can I do a raw diet and can it be healthy? I believe you can, but with a couple of caveats. We really don't, in my view, to this day, know which are the raw foods that are most natural for human beings. Human beings our species began in Africa. And people ended up in other parts of the world, either voluntarily or involuntarily. And let's say you're plucking a tomato. That's raw, but that's not something you ever ate in Africa. That's a North American food. Same with peanuts, same with chocolate, same with potatoes, lots of things. And so the question in my mind has always been, what are those foods? What are those fruits? What are those vegetables that were in, say, Ethiopia, Kenya, the place where human beings really started out? There's no way of telling nowadays, but I am guessing that a diet like that would be really helpful. If you look at chimpanzees, what are they eating? Huge amounts of fruit, lots of leaves and vegetables. They're not eating the things that you'd get at Safeway because it's a different species, so to speak, but little or no meat, no dairy at all.
All right, and so let's look at the scorecard here for the raw food diet. 1.7 out of 5, and it comes in at number 24 on their list. You get a relatively middle of the road mark for fast weight loss, but the rest of the stuff really does seem to be on the low end. Weight loss overall, only 1.3, easy to follow, 1.7, and then health score, 1.5 out of 5. I guess here's my question about this. It kind of goes back to what it was we were talking about earlier. If you have a diet that's only achieving a 1.7 out of 5, I find it really hard to believe, even if you are giving incredibly great weight to easy to follow, that a plant-based diet wouldn't be on this list whatsoever. I would love to see how that rated out for them. I'm just a little
Yeah.
bit skeptical.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, with a raw food diet, a raw food diet could be done, with if you're going to be sprouting beans instead of cooking them and so forth. But it does require a lot of thought, a lot of planning. A vegan diet, or what some people might refer to as a low-fat whole foods diet or whole foods plant-based diet or something like that, it's the easiest thing in the world to have spaghetti with tomato sauce instead of meat sauce. It's the easiest thing in the world to trade your meat chili for a bean chili. A plant-based diet is easy. You're not counting calories. Anybody in the family can do it. The safety is tops, and the efficacy is tops. So we are going to be pushing U.S. News to get a little bit more up to date, look at the science, and also look at doctors who prescribe these diets and the patients who use them so that they can actually maybe do a little bit more accurate rating next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. It makes no sense to me that the raw food diet there would be and that just seems like the hardest thing. I mean, for goodness sakes, you're talking about a raw food diet. That means that your kitchen is going to be full of things that are sprouting. You have to do a whole bunch of prep, a whole bunch of legwork, invest a whole lot of time that nobody has to spend in the kitchen. And that is still on the best diets list. I mean, come on. With a plant-based diet, as you said, it takes no effort to make spaghetti with tomato sauce. Boom, it's right there. Open up a can of beans if you don't have time to make it fresh. Boom, it's right there. Rice takes no time. You can do all of this stuff. It just doesn't take any time. Whatever. I'm on a soapbox. That's not my place. That's not my role. But you got me all fired up today. You got me all fired up.
It's a good place for you to be, Chuck, because I have to say, I learned a real lesson with a study that we called the VegMed study. And you remember the study, we brought in people, 62 people. They were all overweight and they wanted to lose weight. And the study said, come into our study. We will randomly assign you to either a Mediterranean diet with lots of support, with a dietitian who knows this diet, who follows it, who will help you every week to follow a Mediterranean diet as best as it can be followed, or a completely vegan diet, plant-based diet with support also. You're going to do it for 16 weeks. We're going to see how you do. And then you're going to switch and do the opposite diet. So you get to do both diets and you can compare. And Chuck, it was the most amazing thing. At the beginning of this approach, the people on the Mediterranean diet thought, wow, pretty indulgent. Look at what I'm eating. I can have, grilled fish, I can have some olive oil over things. But as the weeks went by, they said, and when does the weight loss start? There really wasn't weight loss with it to any substantial degree. The people on the vegan diet, at first they were nervous. They thought, do I have to acquire a taste for folk music now? And, how do I do a vegan diet? The usual kind of mythology. But as the weeks went by, they got used to the diet, they came to like it, and the weight loss was huge. Then anyway, what happened at 16 weeks, we said, stop. Switch to the other diet. At that point, the people who had been Mediterranean and were now doing vegan suddenly found the weight falling off, and they said, at last, this is why I'm here. But the people who had been vegan and now started the Mediterranean diet, they said, wait a minute, I don't want fish back in my diet. I lost my taste for it. I don't want cheese now. I don't want that olive oil. You taught us how to cook without it. I don't need it. And when they got on the scale, the Mediterranean diet was putting back on the pounds they had lost on the vegan diet. And they got angry. They said, how can people be prescribing this kind of diet that is clearly not the best diet for a person who wants to lose weight? And then we had the same issue with cholesterol. Their cholesterols weren't dropping either because they're eating animal products. Now, let me be clear. A Mediterranean diet for almost everybody is better than what you were eating before. It's just not nearly good enough for most people who, with some support, can do really well on a plant-based diet.
All right. We've got that big announcement coming here in just a second. And if you have a question for Dr. Barnard, post that in the comment or in the chat. We're going to be opening up the doctor's mailbag here momentarily as well. But let's do a kooky diet roll call here because, I mean, the roomies, they put in some gems here. We've got Jen, who says she did the South Beach diet, Weight Watchers. She even tried starvation. Sure, that's not working out very well. Pam did the lemonade diet. Not too familiar with that one. That one's kind of kooky. Ariozone, South Beach. Her husband tried fruit, being an exclusively fruit eater, a fruitarian diet. Weight Watchers, the cabbage soup diet. Stop me. Have you heard of the cabbage soup diet, Dr. Barnard?
It's just what it sounds like, cabbage soup.
That's it. That's all you do.
Very popular back in the 80s and 90s, yep.
Wow. Slim Fast is another popular one. Bonnie did keto. We have Cindy also did the cabbage soup and paleo. Cindy, how was the paleo experience for you? We've got Rachel. Wow. Rachel has run the gamut. Man, this is great. Rachel has done paleo, raw vegan, juiced feast, zone, whole food, plant-based. I think that she ended with whole food plant-based. She's watching us today. So I think that that's the one that she's landed on permanently. So good. Welcome to the club. That's awesome. But I mean, there's just so many out there, and it really can be so confusing, especially this time of year when somebody is looking for the healthiest diet, the diet that's going to be the answer to all of their prayers, the answer to all of their New Year's resolutions. And you just get bombarded with this stuff. How does one really cut through all of the clutter to figure out what really is the healthiest route to take?
Number one, we do have to look at the evidence, and that's really what the exam room is all about, and that's what our research is all about, and we go through this in detail. Number two, I think as we make a diet change, we do need some support, a little bit of education, not necessarily a lot, but it's good to have somebody to hold your hand and to ask easy questions, like I was at a restaurant and they didn't know how to cook something with less fat. What should I do? There are always answers out there, but it's good to kind of go have a little bit of support, especially at the beginning. The third thing, Chuck, is I think it's also important to think about the role of addiction. It's a big word, but we get hooked on foods that really grab us, seduce us, and don't love us back. And sometimes what diets are is a negotiation. Okay, vegan, great diet, but if I'm Mediterranean, then I can have some cheese now and then. Then I can have this, then I can have that. And unfortunately, these compromises keep sustaining the health problems that we're dealing with. But that role of addiction, I think, should be thought about. And of course, support is a huge part of the cure for that too. All
right. So let's talk about this big announcement, Dr. Barnard. I am thrilled with this. There are 3 cities that we will be touring this year to bring the exam room on the road as part of our big 10 million download celebration. We're well beyond 10 million now, but you know what? It's time to party anyway. LA, you are first up on the list. March 30th, Dr. Barnard, you and I will be in LA for a very special taping of the exam room live March 30th. I cannot wait for this.
It's long overdue, and I'm so glad because we have people from California, all the rest of the world tuning in, but now is the time to actually meet live and in person. So I'm delighted that we're going to be there.
Absolutely. So March 30th, LA, get ready. We're coming your way, but we're not stopping there. New York City, a little bit later on in the year. Details to come, but I promise you it won't be very long after we hit LA. We are coming your way, New York, and then right here in our backyard, Washington, D.C., we're also going to be doing a big exam room live that we would love for you to take part of as well. So stay tuned. Big celebrations to come in 2023. Can't wait to take the show on the road. I think that this is great. To do it live and in person is really a dream come true for me. So, I mean, I'm pumped. And LA, New York, DC, those are also our 3 biggest markets here where we have the most listeners in the entire world. It's always those 3. So really, it's our way of saying thank you to you for making this show the health juggernaut that it is to reach out and touch so many millions of people. You ready to take some questions now? I feel like we've been talking a lot about diets and people are all kinds of confused and they've got some questions. So what do you say we open up the doctor's mailbag?
Let's do it.
All right. This is an interesting, I mean, this one just makes me laugh, for goodness gracious sakes. Ina, you mentioned oil a little bit earlier in the conversation. And Ina says, well, now, wait a minute. I've been told that if I don't eat oil, my hair will fall out. Is there any truth whatsoever that you know of to the notion that you got to eat oil if you want a healthy head of hair?
No. I suspect, well, sometimes people are thinking about oils that they use as external treatments for their hair. But I will say this, once in a while, people do have hair loss. And the model for that really is pregnancy. When women go through the various hormonal waves of pregnancy, hair loss can be an issue. It usually sorts itself out. But the reason I mention that is when a person improves their diet, sometimes their body goes through some temporary hormonal shifts too, usually for the good. That's why the people did it. Women with menstrual cramps, women with endometriosis, or people with menopausal symptoms, or people dealing with a cancer diagnosis. They very often change their diet. Their hormones go through a little change. Once in a while, you'll see changes in your hair, usually for the better. One little anecdote. Over the past 30 years, I've seen about 3 or 4 people where their diets were very skewed and their hair was thinning. And they found that if they added more plant protein, beans, tempeh, tofu, to their diet, that little extra plant protein kind of fixed the problem. So, but oil, no, adding oil is not going to keep your hair.
Good to know. Let's see here. Great question for this conversation. Danny's like, look, you guys are talking about all of these different diets, and I see all of these different fitness influencers, bodybuilders online who are eating a lot of meat and dairy, eggs, fish, and she says they look absolutely great. Aren't they healthy? She's wondering.
Well, you notice they didn't post their angiogram. What they posted is the picture that their boyfriend took, or whatever, of what they thought looked good for them. And on just about any diet, you can get rid of extra flab, hopefully, and that's what they post. But obviously, the problems with a meat-based diet, or a diet that has animal products in it, or a lot of grease in it, is the bad things it does on the inside too. And unfortunately, that can reflect also on the outside. If you look at people as the years go by, the damage that free radicals cause is really what's responsible for the aging process. And we can't really stop it completely. But the colorful fruits and vegetables, the orange carrots, the red tomatoes, the purple blueberries and grapes, those antioxidants that give them those colors help slow down that aging process and some of that damage a little bit too.
All right, let's talk about some of that practical advice. I know that that's one of your favorite parts of the show. Instead of doing the deep dive into nutrition, it's like, well, now how do you put this into practice? A question from Video 1000 Nights at 1024. They're an exam room irregular. What specifically does Dr. Barnard say to get restaurants to use as little oil as possible?
Oh, well, first of all, if it's a restaurant that you've gone to one time, they may not really feel very loyal to you, but if you're a regular customer, you've got some clout, especially if you tipped well the last time you were there. So make sure that you know what I'm talking about. Make sure you're valuable to them. And then secondly, just ask. A lot of people are a little afraid to ask. They'll say, okay, when you're sauteing the vegetables, can you leave the oil out? And they'll say, well, sure. I mean, I steam them for other people. How about if I steam them for you? Cool. You've got a salad. The salad is drenched in oil. Bring me the salad. Give me the dressing on the side. Those two things, doing it on the side, just reduce the amount of oil. You're going to discover that you got it licked pretty fast.
Here we go. Patricia Ellis, 1157. How can I convince my mother and mother-in-law that a whole food plant-based diet is the healthiest diet for my kids?
Oh my goodness sakes. Okay, depends on your relationship with your mom or your mother-in-law. I gotta tell you, there's kind of two kinds of families. There is that one rare family where everybody gets along and they actually listen to each other and they take advice. And so you say, here's all the reasons why I've discovered that a plant-based diet is good for kids. I know the rules. The rules are simple. Have fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, those 4 foods. I'm going to have those for my kids. I'm going to make sure they get vitamin B12. That's the other rule. Mom, I know what I'm doing. And in this wonderful, harmonious family, everyone says, great, these are the luckiest kids ever. But that's not you. Um, Unfortunately, most people are in the other family where people are kind of fighting their little turf battles. They're usually kind of innocent things, but people disagree about all kinds of stuff. And that's where you really need to bring in some outside reinforcements. There are books, there are videos on raising vegan kids. And so people won't, your mother-in-law is not going to believe you, but she will believe a book that was written by somebody else who she takes to be an expert, and you just take that book, put some post-it notes in the key pages, give it to her, she'll read it, and she'll be convinced. So you got to bring in some reinforcements. Also, when people see videos together, air pops and popcorn, watch Game Changers together.
That's a great movie. That is a fantastic movie. Everybody can get behind that too. I mean, even if you're not a sports fan, that it's just such a fascinating film, the way that it was put together. Let's take a question here from Sabata at 1237. This is an interesting one. They are looking to lose a little bit of weight, and they're wondering whether putting nuts in a salad, topping it with walnuts or pecans, something like that, would be detrimental to their potential weight loss.
Yeah, it will. I'm sorry to say. Nuts are healthful, and for a person who's not trying to lose weight, it's pretty hard to object to having a nut here and there, because an ounce of nuts will give you some vitamin E and some other healthy nutrients too. The problem is that nuts are one of these very few plant foods that are really dense in calories. Now, that was never really much of a problem in nature because a nut is encased in a shell, and they are seasonal. And so it was kind of hard to overdo it. Nowadays, you can go to the Publix or Safeway or Giant or wherever, and they've got whole cans of them already shelled and roasted and salted, and they are delicious and addicting. So we end up being kind of taken with these really high-calorie foods. So if you are trying to lose weight, I would suggest setting the nuts aside or having only very minimal amounts of them. Don't use them as a snack. Use them kind of the way you're describing, as a seasoning on other foods. But what we really find is when people are not doing well, they need to lose weight. They need to get their diabetes under control. Menopausal symptoms are really driving them crazy, or menstrual cramps, that kind of thing. These are conditions where a plant-based diet that is also really low in oils, including the nuts and seeds, that's where you get the most power. Cure yourself first, solve your problem first, then bring in a little bit of nuts later on if you want to see how you do with that as an addition. But don't assume you're going to lose as much weight by having a vegan diet plus a whole lot of Skippy peanut butter as part of it, because it's high in calories. It's going to slow your progress down.
Let me preface this next question by saying I believe they're asking about saturated fat and whether that can get into the body. Christy, 1236, does the coconut oil you put on your skin and in your hair get absorbed into the body?
No. Excellent question. The answer is no. You can smear it on. You can put it on your car. You can you can shine your shoes with it, and you can put it on your skin. You can put it in your hair. I don't know why anyone would want to, but if you do, it won't go into your bloodstream.
Good to know. I think a lot of people think that the coconut oil in the hair just gives it that shine, gives it the healthy roots. I don't know. I think if you go,
I was missing something, Chuck. I knew I was missing something.
Yeah, I'm no hairdresser. I don't know these things. Donna, 1150. All of my cholesterol markers are good except for high triglycerides. Eating a plant-based diet, I assume she is. What advice might you have?
Oh, okay, great question. A number of years ago, we did a study where the only rules, these were people who wanted to lose weight, the only rules were avoid animal products, keep oils low. What happened? People lost weight like crazy. Their cholesterols came down. And for many, their triglycerides, which are just blood fats, they went down, but for some, they went up. We did another study. Same rules, vegan, low fat, plus low glycemic index. You know what I mean? We're avoiding the sugary foods. We're avoiding the white flour. We're having instead, say, pumpernickel bread instead of white bread. We're having oatmeal. We're having whole grain foods. So there's a lot of carbohydrate, but it's the healthiest carbohydrate. And what do you think happened? The triglycerides went down like a stone. So if you got high triglycerides and you're doing a plant-based diet, perfect. Vegan diet, great, keep oils low, but also favor the low glycemic index foods. Beans, al dente pasta is okay, but really be avoiding the foods with a lot of sugar or a lot of white flour. Those are the things that are going to drive your triglycerides up.
All right, let's grab two more here before we wrap things up for the day. Number one from Danny. Some doctors claim that people need to eat meat in order to heal. Is there any truth to this?
No, there's not, but there are a few conditions where protein is needed for healing. And the classic case that you will see in hospitals is just terribly unfortunate is extensive burns, where the whole body is in this healing process and trying to construct new tissue. And those are cases where the dietitian comes in and has to construct a diet that really loads the person up with protein. Meat, no, it doesn't have to be meat, and it shouldn't be meat, because meat has protein, but it's got bad fat and cholesterol and all the things the body doesn't want. In fact, if you went into the hospital storage rooms and you picked up those little jugs of Ensure, those people in medical care know what I'm talking about. It's a high protein nutritional supplement. About 5 or 6 years ago, the company that made it took Ensure and veganized it. So they've got a green package. It's the same thing, but all the protein is plant-based. So the point is, no, you don't need meat. There are conditions where you need extra protein. Plant protein will do the trick.
All right. Last one is kind of a piggyback off of what it was Dr. Greger was talking about on the show yesterday. We got into teas and coffees in a little bit, but Dab had a follow-up, and I'm hoping you can supply the answer. Dab loves some coffee, and they are wondering how much coffee is too much coffee.
Well, I think the answer is different for everybody. For some people, that 1 cup makes you a new person. Everybody around you discovers that suddenly everybody's a little extra talkative right around 6:45 in the morning because the caffeine is hitting the brain. However, researchers started to say, well, if I'm having 2 cups, 3 cups, 4 cups, that'll make me jittery. I won't be able to sleep. Maybe so. Everybody metabolizes caffeine at a different rate. And there are some people who break it down really fast. They sleep like a baby no matter how much coffee they drink. There are others who have 1 cup of coffee in the morning and they've still got about 1/4 of its caffeine in their brain at 10:30 at night and they can't sleep. One last thing to factor in here, and that is Alzheimer's disease. A study came out about a decade ago that looked at caffeine, coffee in particular, and Alzheimer's, and they found a protective effect. A protective effect that was associated with having 5 or more, yes, I'm not making this up, 5 or more cups of coffee per day. For some reason, it had some brain protective effect. Stay tuned. Whenever I see these studies, I always kind of bookmark it to see if future studies reinforce that. But so far, what it looks like to me is that caffeinated beverages do have personality effects. They will affect you. They will affect sleep. Overall, they seem to be innocuous with regard to health, generally speaking. But I think we need to stay tuned to see if there are benefits or risks to huge consumption. I'm guessing that the person who asked this question is probably not into anything like a danger zone.
Strictly, spitballing here. When you're talking about that study, I'm assuming the 5 cups of coffee that the participants were drinking weren't these caramel macchiato type of Starbucks, right?
Oh my God. What will kill you in the coffee is the creamer. Exactly. That milk and so forth that's added to it. What are you adding? The number 1 nutrient in milk is sugar, lactose sugar. The number 2 is fat, especially saturated fat. Your coronary arteries are snapping closed, not from the coffee, but from the creamer. So you got it.
There we go. All right. Dr. Barnard, thank you so very much for being here, my friend, and doing the 2nd episode of our Health All-Star series. This has been great. We covered a whole lot of diets there. And I mean, you should see the list of other diets that the roomies have tried. I mean, it is an arm's length and then some. It is incredible. So much information out there. I'm glad that you brought a little truth to the table for us today.
Well, let's hope the buck stops here. The diet stops here. Whole food plant-based diet really is a solution for lots of people.
Absolutely. And by the way, the Exam Room Health All-Star Series, it's going to roll on for the next 2 weeks. This is so exciting. We had Dr. Michael Greger on yesterday to kick everything off. Tomorrow, our friend Dr. Will Bulsiewicz will be here. Friday, Rip Esselstyn will be on the show. We haven't spoken with him in a very long time, so I'm really excited to get Plant Strong with him. And then on Monday, my goodness gracious, set a reminder right now, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, the one and only Colin Campbell will be here live with us on the exam room. We have so many others coming up. Cyrus Kambata from Mastering Diabetes as well. Gemma Newman, the Plant Power Doc, will be with us, and she and I have an exciting announcement about another project that we may be working on. Stay tuned for that. We might drop a couple of hints next Wednesday on that. Next Thursday, Dan Buettner from the Blue Zones, and then we'll wrap up the entire series with Dr. Alan Desmond, the doc over in the UK, who has been leading the plant-based diet revolution. So fantastic. And I can't let you go, Dr. Barnard, also without mentioning once again the Gregory J. Ryder Memorial Fund for their continued support of the Exam Room podcast and the Physicians Committee, not just in 2022, 2021, but now into this new year as well. Allison Mahoney, everybody over at the Gregory J. Ryder Memorial Fund is just doing such fantastic work, and it's a privilege to have their name attached to the show.
You know, Greg has such a strong heart and so much kindness, and Allison has carried that spirit forward in such a beautiful way, and I'm so grateful for that support.
And right now you see it on the screen. If you would like to learn more, sign up for their newsletter. You can do that at GregoryRyderFund.org. That's Gregory Ryder, spelled R-E-I-T-E-R, fund.org. Absolutely go there, sign up for the newsletter, learn about all the incredible work that Allison and the team are doing. Dr. Barnard, thank you, my friend. I will let you go, and have a fantastic rest of your day and a happy and healthy new year.
Thank you. You too, Chuck.
All right. And VK, I wanted to let you know, I saw your question at 12:36. You were saying, when are you coming to Ontario? It just so happens that I will be there in the spring for the Planted Expo in Toronto. So stay tuned for that. I'm headed to Toronto in the spring. Cannot wait. So I hope to meet you there. Please come out and see us. But for today, my friends, that is all the time that we have. Again, thank you, Dr. Barnard, for being here, and to the crew behind the scenes for making the magic happen. You are awesome as always. And to you exam roomies and all of those kooky diets that you have tried until you stumbled upon this one, thanks for sharing those with us and having some fun for the last half hour or so. Greatly appreciate you being here. For everybody at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We'll talk to you tomorrow with Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. But until then, keep it plant-based.